speed just matched. 200-mile-an-hour pace left.
If you're not locked in, going into Talladega, close your eyes and pray.
Heard the word chess match. If you think at this racetrack it might have passed you by, at least the back. We get ready for Sprint Cup Series practice from Talladega Super Speedway. The racetrack where so many things can be out of your control. We look at the chase standings after 2 races in this, the second round. Jimmie Johnson, Kevin Harvick, the only 2 drivers that are guaranteed to move into round 3. The rest, even though they may feel comfortable with a cushion of 29 or 27 or even 24 points, as in Kenseth, Busch, and Edwards, nothing is predictable when you come to Talladega. And the car's about ready to roll out of the garage and onto the track. Alongside Steve Letarte, Jeff Burton, I'm Rick Allen. 12 guys started this round with an opportunity to advance into the round of 8. 2 drivers have taken advantage of opportunities. One of those being Jimmie Johnson with a win, the first race of this round. And then last week, Kevin Harvick has done it once again. He has advanced to the next round. He's never been eliminated. Those 2 drivers are the only ones that are guaranteed into the round of 8. There are 10 other drivers fighting for 6 spots.
Yeah, the points are really close. Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to watch the strategy. What do these guys do? If you're Kurt Busch, Truex, what do? Do you try to run in the front all day? Do you try to bide your time a little bit, ride in the back? Some interesting strategy is going to be played, and I think that strategy could change during the race depending on how wild it gets. Some guys might want to get out, or if it's calm, they're going to want to go to the front. So some difficult decisions these drivers and teams are going to have to make.
Well, I think they have to be very aware of their surroundings, Rick. You know, as Jeff mentioned, it's going to change over the course of the race. If we get to halfway or just past halfway and we haven't seen a big accident and most of the cars are still on the racetrack, at some point the patience are going to be tested. How long can you ride in the back? When do you need to go to the front? Already we see a little bit interesting start to this practice. I assumed all these cars would line up and go out in one large pack, but we see the 18 of Kyle Busch here in the little bit unique orange and brown paint scheme. He just goes and leaves by himself, running by himself here on the backstretch. I was expecting a pack.
Yeah, I thought we'd see a pack too, and he didn't roll out alone with the same idea. We have several guys that are in chase. Denny Hamlin, he's doing the same thing. I believe Carl Edwards is doing the same thing. So these guys are trying to figure out how fast their cars are by themselves.
Which is interesting because one of the teams that I think has shown more loyalty to their teammates has been Joe Gibbs Racing. They have run together in a pack and actually work together when they come to these restrictor plate racetracks, working to make sure that each one advances and potentially gets up into the front of the pack. And so now when they go out and are starting to do single car runs, is that surprising?
It surprises me. To be honest with you, I thought the first cars on the racetrack would be in a pack. I thought we'd see maybe 15, 20 cars in a pack, working together to see how the cars drove in a pack, and then it would start to dwindle down and see this in the second half of the practice. But we were already seeing it. As right or wrong with Denny Hamlin, you can see is wide open all the way around this racetrack. Uses as much track as you can on this first lap to try to get some speed up. But it's a pretty uneventful lap for a driver in qualifying. Show him out there running by himself. It changes drastically when you get on the cars on the racetrack, but right now this is pretty simple.
Well, Rick, you mentioned the 4 Joe Gibbs cars and the 5th Toyota with the 78 and Furniture Row Racing. Well, they proved at Daytona they had a plan, and even more importantly, they proved they would stick with the plan. We see right here, all 5 cars lined up on the bottom of the racetrack. It was like that for much of the Daytona 500, but when it came to the end, they said it was the white flag lap, it was game on. Well, that's exactly what it was for the 11 of Denny Hamlin. He moves up to block the 4, which ended up being the push he needed, Jeff, to get up front and contend for the win.
And you saw that big push that he got from Kevin Harvick right here. Matt Kenseth thought he had to come up and block. Denny Hamlin did a nice job making it 3 wide. Matt Kenseth did just a good job keeping him wrecking. And once again, Denny Hamlin had that 4-car push him. Now it's just a drag race. And remember, at Daytona, the start-finish line is right there. But in Talladega, it's more in this area. So the start-finish line could have a huge role in who wins this race on Sunday, being that it's further down the straightaways than it is at Daytona.
Well, you talk about teammates. We already started to see it. So as this pack leaves pit road, look at the front of the pack. 48 of Jimmy Johnson, a car that normally we see run by themselves.
Yeah, never in a pack.
Yeah, well, I think, all week on NASCAR America, we talked about what is Jimmy Johnson's goal at Talladega. Well, the goal is to tow that 24, the car behind him, around for 187.5 laps and give Chase Elliott a chance on that white flag lap to find a way to win the race. And I think we're seeing that plan already unfold in practice. Jimmy Johnson, I question, would ever run in a group, but this race isn't about Jimmy Johnson. This race is about his teammate, Chase Elliott.
Jimmy Johnson already has advanced into the round of 8. At least he has a spot in the round of 8. So he's safe. His teammate in Chase Elliott, not safe. Definitely has to make something happen at this track.
Well, what you saw happen right there is a good example of you have this great plan. As Brett Keselowski's showing a lot of speed right now, just jumping out to go by the 24, doing the same with the 48. You see how easy it is to get separated. Not everybody's on your game plan. They don't care about you. So Jimmy Johnson and Chase Elliott can have a plan going into this race, but in one lap they get separated. Now you got to go find somebody else to work with. So very difficult to go into these races with a plan and stick with it. How about the speed of that 2 car?
Already.
He just jumped out and passed them all by himself. And that's what think about the success that Brad Keselowski has had on these super speedways at Talladega. That's part of the reason why. The fact that he could jump out and make that move is exceptionally impressive.
One of the things right now you're seeing at the bottom of the ribbon across the top of the screen, fast last lap, or fast lap speed. We were seeing 160s, 162, 165 as they were going by themselves. There was guys that were out there by themselves running those lap times. Once you get into the pack, you're going to see drivers gain upwards of 15 to 20 miles an hour in a pack where they would run on their own way slower. So that's also got to play into a crew chief's decision for travels, because the car's going to travel more when it goes faster, Steve.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's all about the race. It's qualifying here, it's single car, single lap. We've seen cars come up and through the field a lot. So while qualifying is important for the pole sitter and you want to go out and run as fast as possible, for all of these cars we see right here, it really comes down to the race.
You guys referenced the fact that the start-finish line at Talladega is actually a few hundred yards past the apex of the turn or the tri-oval. So very unique situation at this racetrack as this pack now working its way down the backstretch. And as they come down the backstretch, let's go to Mike Massara.
I can give you a spectacular perspective of what it's like being at the top of the banking on the outside of turns 3 and 4. These cars coming off a 4,300-foot back straightaway, hitting the corners at about 180 miles per hour. This is a banking of 33 degrees, extremely steep, but they sweep through here in extremely fast fashion. Now, Rick, as you might imagine, this is an incredible view here at the top of the racetrack, but you want to know how we got here? Well, this is what it looks like on the other side of the banking. Very steep incline, yes. We climbed up this with our camera crew. If you're a skier out there, you might be able to identify this with a black diamond. And we're going to go back down now and head to the garage.
Hold somebody's hand, Mike. Don't do it by yourself.
I'll try not to.
I mean, it's hard to believe the size of this facility as well. We talk about the crazy height of the banking, but just the track itself at 2.66 miles, it's the largest track that NASCAR runs at. And just from sheer size and acreage, it is massive.
I love the shot when it shows the speed. Yeah. It shows how fast those cars are really going.
Yeah, because it's so big, sometimes you lose the fact that they're going over 190 miles an hour all the way around. They never get out of the gas at this racetrack. You're going to hold your right foot to the floor the whole time. Sometimes you're going to use your left foot to back it off a little bit. And you guys call that dragging the brake.
Yeah, if you just run wide open, eventually you're going to run into somebody. So you have to time it right. You have to drag the brake or come off the throttle a little bit. You're trying to do a little bit of both. If you drag the brake all the time, you can actually warp a rotor, have a problem, mess the rotor up, but you don't want to be out of the throttle completely either. So there's a right time to drag the brake. There's a right time to come off the throttle.
Well, and Rick, you mentioned about those travels, how the cars travel different by themselves and within the pack. The other issue is they travel different from being the leader. You see what Brad Keselowski, the two is, his car's traveling a lot because it's pushing all the air by itself. Or if you go back maybe 3 or 4 cars behind him, you see the 88 of Alex Bowman. Well, his car isn't pushing much air. The air is being broken by the cars in front of him, much like following a tractor trailer down the interstate. There's not a lot of air going on in his car, so his car's kind of up out of the track. So situational. That's what drafting's all about. It's very hard to practice, very hard to set up for, because it seems like the position within the pack, Jeff, can have more to do with your car and how it drives than anything else.
Well, again, if you look at this pack, these cars behind this pack, they could get a big run because the draft is so big with so many cars side by side. Those cars are going so fast that even though they're behind cars, they travel a lot because of the speed. So very difficult to get all the travels exactly right because of the varying situations.
We continue to talk about the draft. Let's try to break that down and maybe give somebody a feel. When you're going down the interstate and you come up behind a semi and you feel like a little bit of buffeting, the wind is moving with you and kind of it's changing the air, right? Is that what you're feeling in a race car?
Better yet, roll the window down, have your hand out the window, then put it behind the mirror, behind the side mirror. So you have all that air, and then you slide it behind the side mirror, and there's no air anymore. That's really a better comparison because everybody's going the same direction, obviously, but that lack of air hitting your car is what makes the second place car faster.
We're seeing the RPMs inch toward 8,500 here for Kevin Harvick.
See this run they're going to get? They're behind this pack a little bit, so they're going to get this big run. Here the RPMs, he never lifts, never comes off the throttle. It's easy to run wide open here. There's situational times where you can't run wide open, where you're in the middle, get in the corner, or through the travel, especially through the travel here. It gets crazy. This bottom lane, where he has his left side, so actually has less banking than the rest of the racetrack. So when you're 3 wide or 4 wide and you're on that bottom lane, there's very little grip. The car gets very light right there.
Even up to 8,700, we saw the RPMs, and that's really, you're seeing speeds of 197 miles an hour that we just saw there.
And the wind actually has a lot to do with that as well.
Yes.
We have a big wind here at Talladega today, and it's a headwind down the backstretch. So I would expect to see less RPM down the backstretch because they're driving into the headwind or down the front stretch.
The other thing we should talk about is this whole Talladega build-up is really about the guys in the chase. But what about the guys that haven't won races this year? Think about those guys. This is an opportunity for Clint Boyer, who hasn't run very well this year, to get on a restricted plate race where he's really good and trying to find a way to get away. You see Paul Bernard in the screen, Danica Patrick. All these guys, they have an opportunity on Sunday that they don't have on most Sundays. On most Sundays, they don't really have the speed to win the race unless something happens. But here, anything can happen. So all those teams, they don't care about the chase. They're not in it. They're not playing part of it. This could turn their season around. This could make their year worth doing. So they come into this race with a completely different idea than, say, Matt Kenseth did.
Right. Clint Boyer in the back there. If we take a look at the speeds, this is drivers that are in that draft. And by the way, none of the top 10 are Chase drivers.